Yes. So, welcome. We never do Q&A or panels, but this is luckily the only one. So thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Ferry. Maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience.
So my name is Ferry Grijpink. I'm a partner at McKinsey. We're a consulting company globally. We do a lot of research in IoT, do a lot of work with clients in IoT, much more the large corporates. So very excited to be here today. I know Wienke for a long time. See a lot of the exciting things here. Just heard about the water conversation. And I think the conversation we want to have is about how our larger clients look at IoT. But maybe before we start, who of you here are developers? And we're more in the system integration space. And then we'll have products like hardware. Interesting. It's an interesting mix. So I hope the conversation is interesting for all of you, but let's go into this.
Yeah, sure. This, as you said, like you're doing your roundtables and conversations with CEOs of large telcos, systems integrators, can you tell anything about like how do they look at IoT when they hear the word IoT? What's in their mind?
I think we're really at this point of time in an ice age of IoT when it comes to investors and large corporates. I wrote on LinkedIn 3 days back that I was honored to be with you on the States and with all of you. And one of the big investors wrote down, IoT is dead. And it's like, huh? I don't get it. But when I speak with boards and investors, they say, this failed. You know, this is not where we want it to be. So from a money point of view, an investment point of view, people are a bit skeptical. There was this massive hype. They hoped this would be, and we wrote reports, and we're still very optimistic. And we actually believe there will be 4 or 5 trillion of value creation in 2030 by IoT, by the hard work you guys are doing and enabling. But the large corporate, the large investors are basically saying, hey, this is not scalable. It's not easy money, not high margin. It's a much more fragmented space with much more smaller companies. So you see a little bit of VC money dripping out. You see a little bit of consolidation happening at companies being bought. So on one hand, we see this ice age when we talk with the corporates. Then if you go on the ground, we see a lot of excitement because for the first time, I see a lot of real deployments happening. It's not POCs anymore. People really at scale, every new building has facial recognition, has all the energy management systems in it. A lot of farmers, well, not Dutch farmers for the people in the room, but a lot of farmers are looking at this type of solutions. So what I see is actually where the large corporate, and you saw, Vodafone want to sell some pieces. Telenor said we want external capital because they're losing a lot of the faith in the scalability. On the low end, we see, or the low end, on the actual work, we see a lot of value being created, and therefore we're in an interesting conundrum of, on the investor radar and a large corporate radar, it's getting a bit of a dirty word. While on the actual, where do we find the money? There we actually see a lot of excitement.
Yeah, very interesting. So the top-down value grab of the corporate that you're saying they're a bit bearish on, let's say, but more bullish on the bottom-up value creation. I think that's also what we've seen here and see in our base as well. Is that, but that's a great thing, right? So what kind of signs do you see in the market? So what's your everybody here in the room maybe know that Google IoT killed Google IoT, so Google killed IoT. So is that a sign of this? It's like, what's your take on that?
I think massive consolidation. I think what we see, you see a lot of deals happening now. So you see venture capital and private equity try to get out. And they want a consolidation because they want to see more margin. In my mind, where we see the market heading to is a couple of large companies that try to grab the scalable parts of it, and a lot of smaller companies which have more niches and can be quite profitable. Because that's where I think the real value learning is that in many of these niche industries, there's a lot of money being created. Who of you ever had a pilot who didn't deliver the value? I'm just looking around. Did any of your pilots ever fail because it didn't deliver value? I see no hands being raised. Did it ever fail because of technology? Did it ever fail because change management? So what we often see is that, and so we did a big report in 2015. We predicted the world around IoT. And then in 2020, we looked at were we right? We try to be honest as McKinsey, and often you throw out a big number, and then 5 years later we looked, and actually the number was 20-30% lower. And then we looked, why is that? And then interestingly enough, you see that there are a couple of good things. Technology. So the technology actually works. So at this point of time, and again, there's only developers, so you guys already know this, but I always tell my big clients, there's no reason not to do it for technology's sake, because the technology works, and you got multiple alternatives. From LoRa to you go here, you see there's multiple alternatives of solutions that work. The second, which is interestingly enough, is that the business case is actually much better than most people think. We just sold a 7 million of water, but every time we do a business case, the business case actually does work. But then, where is it failing? And when we fail, we see a couple of things. I think number one is change management. People need to adopt, and people need to basically change. I was just talking with an Indian client, and we said, we did this work for a refinery, and then we put a sensor in every meter. And then suddenly, they saw real-time meter readings, so their amount of alarms exploded by 5 times. So they had 5 times more alarms. So their maintenance crew got crazy because they started running around this refinery. So they had to learn that one alarm is not enough, you need multiple alarms, how long was the alarm, and that change management they didn't have time for. So I think on one hand, we see change management as a real problem. Secondly, what we see more and more is that getting it deployed, installed, getting the installation done, people putting it in, is a big problem. Where do you find the people to install it? And especially, where do you find people to, not you guys, cool developers, but getting it back into my SAP, getting it back into my core systems, getting into my cybersecurity, because that is difficult and quite often a big bottleneck. So that's another bottleneck we actually see. And then there's a bunch of regulation, privacy stuff that the people are worried about, which also hold the things back. So on one hand, we see value in technology working, but then we see the people aspect holding people back.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So you're saying like at least there is a will and a way. The way is still a bit obstructed by almost like you're saying practicalities and politics. And you're saying like the corporate development, and I think there is this distinguishing in the market where you clearly see which IoT companies are doing corporate development and which are doing business development. So what's the opportunity on the table if this is our battlefield almost, right? Like, is it creating additional corporate opportunities for these corporates to back out, right? Or is it creating additional challenges? And what are the competences that we should be developing more?
So my advice to entrepreneurs and the developers here is that to say, make it easy to deploy. Because like I said, the change management and integration is so incredibly important. So anything that works out of the box and doesn't have to be integrated with all system is successful. So if you look at Samsara, again, investors walked away because IoT is not successful, but if you look at their top line, it's growing very, very rapidly. It's a very exciting company. And we see more and more people there, a lot of the Siemenses of this world try to make their kettle smart, but there's a small UK company we work for who has a small box, they connect to the kettle, they save 20% management, no integration needed, all done over the air. That type of solutions where you have a software solution and a hardware solution that works out of the box doesn't require much change management to make the ROI, to make the business case, those are very successful. And what I think, and again, I mentioned Samsara here because I think that's quite interesting, is what they do is to say, okay, now you've deployed us. We saved you 5% of fuel, we saved you 3% of insurance, so you made your money back. Now, if you give us a little bit of that money back, we have with one API, we can do another 1 or 2%. And with one more API, we can do another 2%. So you slowly start eating away that resistance and that change management. Because recession is coming, winter is coming. We're in the ice age of IoT, and then winter is coming in the global economy. So it's going to be a difficult time for everybody. At the same time, we all need to save cost on energy. We all need to save cost on people. And a lot of your solutions are actually immediately profitable. We see now people deploying smart cameras for entry. We see a lot of safety cameras replacing stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, but it needs to work out of the box. It needs to have an ROI quickly. And then it needs to start sneakily, slowly eating away all that resistance to get bigger. If you need a deep integration in the SAP, you need a lot of installation, a lot of change management, the next 12 to 18 months will be very tough for you.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. We shared it at the opening keynote also the time to value we see, let's say, exponentially decreasing in our customer base, right? And yeah, this whole landscape you're describing, looking at what this technology is here and now, that there's probably a lot of opportunities on the table. So you're saying change management can be all kinds of reasons, operational, politics, kind of things. This is probably not in the comfort zone of our general audience. So can you share more either stories or like maybe a silver bullet, or what kind of ideas is this to ruffle some feathers? Can you share some ideas?
It's typically inertia. So, and this is nothing to do with IoT. But my most favorite change management example is UK doctors. Who's from the UK? Anybody from the UK here? No, one. Sorry, I'm going to make fun of UK doctors, so don't get angry with me. But if you look at GPs, general practitioners in the UK, they never wanted to do online consultations, never. And they tried everything, the NHS, they didn't do it. Within 6 weeks after Corona, the GPs were complaining there was no online consultation opportunity available, and the NHS was dropping the ball. So interestingly enough, the environment changed. So it's really how do you break through inertia? Yeah. And what we saw with these people on the refinery is that on one hand, what we saw when we did the meters, these were people, meter, you packed your car, you're gonna paint, or you're gonna reset, or you're gonna fix. Now they first had to go to a computer, they had to look at a dashboard, they had to do something. The more you can automate that away, and you make it very simple for them, it's red or green, or it's double green. So make it really simple for them. And sometimes I have a company who showed me, oh, it's very easy, you look at this meter, and then at that meter, and if that, and it's like, okay, you know, the average technician of 50 who doesn't know how to work his own computer is not gonna get that. So really think through how can I make it simple. I think that is number one. The second example, the refinery, sorry I talk about it, but you asked me practical, is they had instruction videos how to do repairs. And it showed you in great detail how to do repairs. How many people do you think watch the videos? 5%. 5% watch the videos. So a lot of mistakes were being made. And we start asking, why are you watching not the videos? It's because they had to open up their laptop. It was a Wi-Fi connection. Often it took 2 minutes to download. So the downloading alone, people didn't do it. We installed a 5G network for the meters, and then they could download it in 15 seconds. And we gave them tablets, so they didn't have to open it up. And then we went from 5% to 35%. Still not where we wanted to be, but the breakage and the problems massively collapsed. So how can you make it incredibly stupid for people? And assume the developers were here, you're here in the, you know, really, if you think it's simple, then make it 10x simpler. Because people don't want, a lot of people don't want to learn. People don't want to use technology. They just want to do their job. And I think it's quite often, I'm an electrical engineering by training, so I'm a bit of a nerd. So I love this stuff. But a lot of these practical people don't like this stuff. And the other thing is to really take a problem away. The GPs wanted to do it because they were afraid of getting sick. What you see is if you can help the technicians to do things faster, to do things safer, to really take a problem away for them, I think that is when you get the real value and you can really win. And that helps with change management. But the more and more you can automate all the problems away and give a solution that works out of the box, a little bit like Samsara, drive slower, drive faster. It's a little sign, it's very simple, it's very stupid, it saves money, and therefore you get that immediate value, and you can do the more stuff out of the box later. And often, we as developers, we as technicians, love to start with the most complex stuff. And then you lose people.
We're addicted to hard problems.
Start with where can I save 5%? And then we can later explain, by the way, we can also do 15. But 5% immediate is for most managers more important than 15% in 6 months.
Yeah, interesting. It's almost like history repeats itself. I remember like going into IT, it was like 10, 12 years ago. And you could have said this exact same story about ERPs. Like, why are you still using pen and paper while you have your fancy SAP system here? Yeah, very, very interesting insights. And And so adoption basically is the key in the change management to adoption. Okay, thank you very much for being here and sharing your insights. Is
that a question over there? Is that?
If we have any questions, then.
I think you touched on it. It was a long question. I tried to summarize it, but basically, I think there's a complexity with business cases. There's a complexity around whose business case are you doing, because sometimes you need to work. The business case in IoT where it's more difficult is you win, I lose. So, for example, when you do feedstock, if you basically have a more efficient way to do feedstock, that's great for the farmer, but it's terrible for the feedstock producer. So you need to find business cases that work over a chain. And I think that we often see is difficult. And therefore, for example, in farming, we see a lot of farming as a service, where instead of, you need to change business model, which makes it complex. I also love the comment you make to basically say you need to actually make two business cases. You need to make a business case for top management that the money works, but you also need to make the business case for the technician who needs to adopt it, that it actually is going to help him to make the case. I think that's also incredibly important. We actually, and again, we are at zero scale, so I'll stop, but 95% of the business cases we checked actually worked out. And the reason not to adopt this, my change agenda is too big. So it's typically not because of the money, it's typically because, yeah, but there's 7 other things I also need to do. And out of those 7 other things, I prioritize those instead of this solution. So it's not I think it's not the money. I think that's the good thing as a consultant, but breaking through, but it means simple, out of the box, take it away, and really try to solve an immediate problem for the next 6 months. Thank you for having me. We are out of time, yep.
Thanks a lot, Ferry. Hey.